My life was a carefully constructed lie, and I was about to dismantle it, piece by agonizing piece. The frigid grasp of the Dublin night was nothing compared to the icy dread that had taken root deep within my soul. Every thread of my existence felt stretched to breaking point, threatening to snap under the weight of betrayals both petty and profound. They called me bitter, a man consumed by outdated prejudices. Perhaps they were right. I, Lewis, a man of 38 from the historic, cobblestone streets of Dublin, had always prided myself on my forthrightness, especially when confronted with what I perceived as blatant illogicality. For a decade and a half, I had been a stalwart architect at a prominent financial institution, a profession that offered the comforting illusion of order in a world increasingly spiraling into chaos. Yet I was on the cusp of discovering that order was merely a fragile, fleeting mirage. My deepest yearning was for stability, a genuine partner to navigate life's turbulent waters. After a succession of fleeting relationships, I believed I was finally ready to commit. My first earnest endeavor to find the one began with Fiona. For 9 torturous months, a gnawing suspicion festered within me. Call it instinct, call it an overactive imagination, but something felt undeniably wrong. Then, one crisp Wednesday afternoon, the illusion shattered with brutal force. I returned to my compact apartment to pick something needed for my work, but found Fiona entwined with a man whose wisps of silver hair and deeply etched wrinkles spoke of a life lived far beyond my comprehension. He must have been 65, perhaps older. The sting of betrayal was immediate, a sharp, searing pain that stole my breath. Then came Bront. 7 months into that relationship, the sense of déjà vu was suffocating. Again, an older man. It was like a grotesque, recurring nightmare, a bewildering pattern I simply couldn't decipher. What was this inexplicable allure of men old enough to be their fathers, when I was right there younger, brimming with vitality, and, if I may say so myself, rather dashing? It utterly baffled me, chipping away at my self-worth with each agonizing repetition. But the most agonizing wound, the one that truly festered, was self-inflicted. It stemmed from a different kind of pursuit, one that culminated in the spectacular downfall of another man's career. Her name was Saoirse, a highly sought-after consultant at the bank, not a direct employee, but her presence resonated like a captivating melody through the otherwise sterile corridors. I was utterly captivated. However, I soon discovered that Mr. Abernethy, my superior, a man whose condescending smirk I had grown to despise, was also ardently pursuing her. The jealousy was a bitter, metallic taste in my mouth. We had a ferocious shouting match, a public spectacle where he mercilessly belittled me, his words echoing in the vast, unforgiving space of the office. That was the precise moment the switch flipped. Revenge became my singular, all-consuming focus. My skills, meticulously honed over years of safeguarding the bank's most sensitive secrets, were now weaponized. I dug relentlessly, sifting through digital breadcrumbs, until I unearthed a trove of meticulously concealed, fraudulent financial dealings Mr. Abernethy had orchestrated. The evidence was irrefutable, damning. He was summarily dismissed, and in the smoldering ashes of his career, I felt a fleeting, perverse sense of triumph. Saoirse, of course, vanished from my life just as abruptly as she had appeared, another casualty in my disastrous, relentless quest for genuine connection. My family, blissfully unaware of the simmering resentment that churned within me, had their own distinct agenda. My mother, bless her traditional Irish Catholic heart, was relentlessly persistent. "Lewis," she would plead, her voice laced with an exasperated affection, "you need a good, God-fearing woman, a lass of impeccable character." She frequently spoke of Niam, a sweet, devout family friend from our local parish, a regular fixture in the church choir. The very notion chafed at me. I yearned to forge my own path, to make my own choices, not to be steered like a ship without a rudder. The thought of being set up, of having my inability to find a partner explicitly highlighted, felt utterly emasculating. I distanced myself, phone calls growing shorter, visits becoming increasingly rare. The arguments with my mother were frequent, her fervent desire for my marital bliss clashing violently with my desperate, aching need for independence. It was November 2022. The air was brisk, the leaves a riot of autumnal colors, but my life felt utterly stagnant. Enough was truly enough. I resolved to cast my net wider, much wider than the familiar waters of Dublin. I signed up for eHarmony, a vast digital ocean teeming with hopeful romantics. And there she was, Orla, tall, American, a forensic accountant living in Edinburgh, Scotland. Our initial chats blossomed into something far more profound, a genuine connection that hummed with electrifying promise. She would visit me in Dublin on weekends, her vibrant presence a welcome disruption to my solitary, regimented routine. But there was a condition, one she laid out with unwavering conviction: no intimacy until marriage. She was a devout Christian, she explained, and she believed firmly in preserving sacred boundaries. I, battered and bruised by past betrayals, saw it as an irrefutable sign of fidelity, a precious diamond in the rough. I agreed, eagerly, my heart swelling with renewed hope. This, I thought, was it, my true gold mine. A year later, we stood at the altar of St. Patrick's Cathedral, exchanging vows, my heart brimming with a fragile, almost unbearable hope. The apartment we had found together, a cozy sanctuary nestled in the heart of Dublin, beckoned invitingly. The night of our wedding, a tremor of anticipation ran through me, an electric current of excitement. Orla, ever graceful, excused herself to freshen up in the bathroom. A few minutes later, unable to wait a second longer, I followed. I pushed open the door, a hopeful smile gracing my lips, ready to embrace our new life together. The smile died, a silent, agonizing death. My world tilted violently, then shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Sitting between Orla's thighs, unmistakable, undeniable, was a penis, a truly massive one. The scream tore from my throat before I even registered it, a guttural cry of pure, unadulterated horror. My legs gave out beneath me, sending me crashing to the cold, unforgiving tiles. The last thing I saw before the engulfing darkness consumed me was Orla's horrified face, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and something akin to profound sorrow. I awoke in a sterile hospital bed, the antiseptic smell assaulting my senses. Orla was there, her face pale, her hand hovering uncertainly near mine. I pulled away instinctively, recoiling as if from a viper. That night, sleep offered no escape from the torment. "Monsters," I mumbled into the suffocating darkness, over and over. "Monsters, monsters, monsters." It took 2 days to fully recover from the initial shock. 2 days for the dense fog of disbelief to finally clear, replaced by a searing, all-consuming rage. Deception. Fraud. Intent to harm. I would make her pay for this egregious transgression. I immediately contacted Vincent O'Connell, a lawyer renowned for his razor-sharp wit and even sharper legal mind. We sued. Orla, of course, found her own formidable counsel. The courtroom transformed into a brutal battleground, a public circus of highly personal, excruciatingly painful disclosures. My lawyer, Vincent, argued passionately for the immediate dissolution of the marriage, citing intentional deception and demanding a staggering £1 million in damages. Orla's lawyer, a formidable woman named Maeve Kelly, countered with an icy calm. "My client," she stated, her voice calm and measured, "is a woman. She has always considered herself one since birth. She menstruates. She possesses a fully functional female reproductive system." That, she argued, was precisely why her intersex status was not, in her view, relevant to disclose. There was no basis, she insisted, for the dissolution of the marriage or any claims of damages. The case dragged on for 6 excruciating months. Each passing day was a fresh wound, a relentless rehashing of the most intimate, devastating betrayal imaginable. But finally, mercifully, it ended. The marriage was dissolved, and I was awarded a modest £200,000 in damages on the basis of deceit. That evening, as the Dublin sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues of orange and purple, a fragile, tentative peace settled over me. It wasn't full healing, not by a long shot, but it was a crucial, desperately needed start. A year passed, a quiet period of recovery, introspection, and profound reflection. The trauma slowly receded, replaced by a dull, persistent ache in my chest. And then, like a half-forgotten melody, my mother's persistent, well-meaning suggestions resurfaced. Naim, the good church girl, the choir member, maybe, just maybe, they had been right all along. I found her number, tucked away in an old, dust-laden contacts list. We agreed to meet at a quiet, unassuming cafe in the heart of Dublin, a neutral territory devoid of past associations. The air was thick with unspoken history, a silent hum of what might have been. I laid out my intentions, my voice surprisingly steady, devoid of the usual tremor of anxiety. Naim listened intently, her expression unreadable, her kind eyes fixed on mine. Then she spoke. "Louis," she said softly, her voice a gentle caress, "I'm engaged to a truly wonderful man named Declan." Another one, taken, snatched away from me just as I dared to reach for it, to grasp at a semblance of happiness. A familiar, cold fury began to simmer deep within me, a vengeful fire igniting in my gut. Declan. His identity remained a frustrating mystery, but one thing was undeniably clear. I was going to find out who he was. And this time, revenge would be a dish served not just cold, but utterly devastating, a catastrophic, life-altering event. The news hit me with the force of a physical blow, a chilling confirmation that the universe, or fate, or whatever malevolent, cosmic force was at play, was actively, relentlessly conspiring against me. Naim, the one person my family had vouched for, the beacon of stability they'd presented as my salvation, was now engaged. Another piece of what I considered rightfully mine, snatched away before I could even grasp it. My mind, an intricate web of connections and calculations meticulously honed by years of intricate work, immediately shifted into overdrive. Who was this Declan? The name was agonizingly common, frustratingly so. It offered no immediate, discernible clues. But I possessed resources, specialized skills, and a burning, all-consuming desire to unravel this latest, profound injustice. I needed to understand the man who dared to stand so brazenly in my path. My initial thoughts were a chaotic jumble of raw anger and a desperate, gnawing need for control. I pictured him, a faceless rival, smug and utterly oblivious to the profound chaos he'd unwittingly unleashed in my already fractured, precarious world. The days that followed were a blur of restless, sleepless nights and obsessive, relentless research. I started with Naim. Her social media, meticulously curated for family and close church friends, offered precious little. No overt declarations of love, no gushing photos of her fiancé. Just the usual, innocuous updates about choir practice and local community events. It was almost too perfect, too private. This infuriating lack of information only fueled my suspicion. Why the intense secrecy? My investigation then branched out, extending its tendrils into the wider community. I subtly probed mutual acquaintances from the church, feigning casual, polite interest. "Naim seems so exceptionally happy lately," I'd remark, hoping to elicit a juicy tidbit of information, a careless slip of the tongue. "Anything exciting going on with her these days?" Most offered vague, polite, unhelpful responses. "Oh, Naim, always cheerful." But one crisp Sunday, after morning service, Bridget, a kind, elderly woman who often gossiped in hushed, conspiratorial tones over coffee and biscuits, paused, her eyes twinkling with suppressed excitement. "Naim is truly blessed," she whispered, leaning in conspiratorially. "Her young man is just wonderful. A real pillar of the community, they say. Very private, though, keeps to himself. Works in finance, I hear. Something about investments, very high-end." Finance. Investments. That was a start, a glimmer of light in the oppressive darkness. It narrowed the field, but only marginally. The world of finance was vast, a sprawling, impenetrable labyrinth. My expertise, however, wasn't just about computers and code. It was about data, about patterns, about finding the hidden connections, the invisible threads that linked disparate pieces of information. I began cross-referencing public records, business directories, even obscure local news archives. I searched for Declan in Dublin, filtering by age, by profession. The list remained stubbornly, frustratingly long. Then a fleeting, almost forgotten memory surfaced like a ghost from the past. Naim had once mentioned, in a passing conversation years ago, that her family had invested in a new local startup. Something about a cutting-edge financial app designed for high-net-worth individuals. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but I remembered the name distinctly, Cairn Capital. I pivoted my search with renewed determination. I looked for Declan connected to Cairn Capital. And there, among the top search results, a name emerged, stark and prominent, Declan Murray. A professional photograph accompanied it, a meticulously composed headshot of a man in his late 30s, early 40s, with intelligent, yet somewhat guarded, eyes. He was the CEO of Cairn Capital, a burgeoning company that had indeed been making significant waves in the Dublin financial tech scene, particularly in secure, high-volume transactions. My heart pounded with a tumultuous mix of dread and exhilarating triumph. Could this truly be him? The accompanying article highlighted his philanthropic efforts, his quiet, almost reclusive leadership style, his unwavering dedication to local community initiatives. He sounded perfect, too perfect, in fact. A stark, infuriating contrast to my own messy, complicated, often tumultuous life. This only intensified my grim resolve, sharpening my focus. I dug deeper into Declan Murray's digital footprint. It was minimal, almost surgically clean. No personal social media presence, no revealing anecdotes, no careless posts, just meticulously crafted professional profiles and sterile press releases. This extreme level of privacy was unnerving, almost as if he had something significant to conceal. Or perhaps, I grudgingly considered, he was simply a genuinely private individual. I scoffed at the latter notion. No one was that private without a compelling reason, especially in this hyper-connected age. Then, an old online forum, a highly niche discussion board for advanced security professionals, caught my eye. An anonymous user, posting under the enigmatic handle Emerald Fox, had once shared a complex, obscure security flaw they had discovered in a nascent financial application back in 2018. The description of the app's architecture, though deliberately vague, bore a striking, almost uncanny resemblance to early descriptions of Cairn Capital's core technology. The Emerald Fox had openly boasted about exploiting the flaw, not for malicious intent, but purely to prove a point about systemic vulnerabilities. It was a highly technical post, filled with jargon only a seasoned expert would fully understand, and the writing style, the subtle turns of phrase, even a particular regional slang embedded within the text, resonated with something disturbingly familiar. A chilling, insidious thought wormed its way into my mind, coiling around my fears. I distinctly remembered a conversation with Mr. Abernathy, my former boss, months before I exposed his deep-seated fraud. He'd been boasting about a security challenge he'd overcome at a previous, unnamed company. Something about outsmarting a rival's attempts to find vulnerabilities in their system, about locking down their digital vaults. He'd even mentioned a specific, obscure technical detail that Emerald Fox had also meticulously detailed in their post. Was it truly possible? Could Declan Murray be connected to my old boss, the man whose career I had so ruthlessly dismantled? I meticulously cross-referenced their timelines. Mr. Abernathy had worked at a small, struggling investment firm before joining the bank. A firm that had, incidentally, gone bankrupt shortly after 2018. Eerily around the same time, Emerald Fox was actively posting on the forum. What if Mr. Abernathy's security challenge was actually a sophisticated cover-up for something far darker, something illegal? What if Declan Murray, or someone intimately associated with him, had been intricately involved in the mysterious downfall of that firm? The puzzle pieces began to click into place with disturbing precision. forming a cohesive, terrifying picture. This wasn't just about Niam anymore. This was about a deeper, far more insidious network of connections, a shadow war I hadn't even realized I was fighting until now. The thought sent a jolt of pure adrenaline coursing through my veins. It meant my problems weren't isolated incidents, unfortunate coincidences, but rather integral parts of a larger, unseen, malevolent design. And I, Lewis, the supposed bigot who simply wanted a stable, uncomplicated life, was somehow inextricably caught in its intricate, deadly web. I needed to get closer to Declan Murray, to understand his vulnerabilities, to uncover his deepest, darkest secrets. But how? He was a phantom, an unblemished public figure, seemingly beyond reproach. Then an idea, a dangerous, reckless, yet undeniably brilliant idea, began to form in my mind. Cairn Capital was expanding rapidly, aggressively. They would undoubtedly need highly skilled, experienced professionals to manage their burgeoning infrastructure. I would apply, not for a job, not for a career advancement, but for access to dismantle them from the inside, just as I had systematically dismantled Mr. Abernathy. The searing irony was not lost on me. It stung with bitter clarity. I was rapidly becoming the very thing I despised, a schemer, a manipulator, a vengeful architect of ruin. But what choice did I truly have? The universe, it seemed, had left me no other viable option. My application to Cairn Capital was meticulously crafted, showcasing my extensive, impeccable experience and my seemingly innocuous desire for a new, invigorating challenge in a dynamic, rapidly growing environment. I even tailored my resume to highlight aspects that would undeniably appeal to a company deeply focused on cutting-edge innovation and impenetrable security. The interview process was grueling, an exhaustive test of my technical prowess, a testament to the company's exceptionally high standards. Declan Murray himself conducted the final, decisive interview, his gaze piercing, his questions sharp, incisive, and surprisingly insightful. I maintained a calm, composed demeanor throughout, answering with practiced confidence my true, dark intentions hidden beneath impenetrable layers of professional ambition and feigned enthusiasm. He looked at me, a flicker of something unreadable, almost calculating, in his eyes. "Mr. O'Connor," he said, his voice even devoid of inflection, "you possess an impressively comprehensive resume, but I sense a certain restlessness, a deeper current. What truly drives you, beyond the technical expertise?" I met his unwavering gaze, a carefully constructed sincerity etched on my face. "I'm driven by an unyielding desire for excellence, Mr. Murray," I replied, my voice steady, unwavering, "and a profound, deep-seated belief in the transformative power of technology to create secure, reliable, and enduring systems. I want to build something that lasts, something truly impactful." He held my gaze for a moment longer. Then a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched the corners of his lips, a fleeting ghost of an expression. "Welcome aboard, Lewis." The words were a resounding victory, a critical gateway to the unknown, a clandestine operation now officially underway. But as I shook his hand, a cold, unsettling shiver ran down my spine, a premonition of darker things to come. The game had truly begun, and I had no idea what treacherous, hidden secrets lay buried within the formidable walls of Cairn Capital, or what further, terrifying depths I would have to plumb within myself to finally, irrevocably find my elusive peace. My first few weeks at Cairn Capital were a whirlwind of carefully orchestrated observation. I immersed myself in the company's infrastructure, ostensibly learning the ropes. But in reality, I was searching for cracks, for vulnerabilities, for anything that could expose Declan Murray. The office itself was a marvel of modern design. Sleek glass walls, polished concrete floors, and an open-plan layout that fostered a deceptive sense of transparency. Declan's office, however, was an exception, a soundproofed sanctuary on the top floor, its opaque door a constant reminder of the secrets it held. I quickly established myself as a competent, if somewhat quiet, member of the team. My colleagues, a mix of ambitious young developers and seasoned veterans, seemed friendly enough. There was Aoife, a brilliant network engineer with an infectious laugh, and Brendan, a systems administrator who knew every server by its serial number. I made small talk, feigned interest in their weekend plans, all while my mind buzzed with my true objective. I started with the network logs. Years of experience had taught me that every digital interaction leaves a trace, a breadcrumb trail. I spent late nights, long after everyone else had left, poring over gigabytes of data, looking for anomalies, for unusual access patterns, for anything that hinted at improprious activity. It was like sifting through a colossal haystack for a single, incriminating needle. One evening, deep into my digital spelunking, I stumbled upon a series of encrypted communications originating from a server that wasn't officially part of Cairn Capital's network. The IP address traced back to a small, nondescript data center in a remote part of rural Ireland. This wasn't standard operating procedure for a financial institution of this size. Why the clandestine server? My gut screamed suspicion. I couldn't decrypt the messages without raising flags, but the metadata alone was revealing. The communications were frequent, almost daily, and consistently exchanged with a single, unidentifiable external address. The timing of these exchanges also intrigued me. They almost always occurred late at night, often coinciding with periods when Declan Murray was known to be working remotely or from his private office. A coincidence? I highly doubted it. The next day, I made a point of casually observing Declan. He was, as always, impeccably dressed, his movements precise, his demeanor calm and collected. But there was a subtle tension around his eyes, a tightness in his jaw that wasn't visible to the casual observer. He was carrying a slim, unmarked tablet, which he rarely let out of his sight. It struck me then, could he be accessing that remote server directly from that device? I needed to confirm my suspicions without triggering any alarms. One afternoon, during a company-wide fire drill, I saw my opportunity. As everyone evacuated the building, Declan, ever the stoic leader, was one of the last to leave. In the momentary chaos, he accidentally left his tablet on his desk, partially obscured by a stack of papers. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. As soon as the coast was clear, I doubled back. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the tablet. It was password protected, of course. But years of bypassing security protocols had honed my skills. I quickly ran a common brute force script I had developed years ago, a tool designed for ethical penetration testing, not for personal vendettas. Within minutes, the screen flickered and the tablet unlocked. What I found made my blood run cold. There was a secure messaging app, one I recognized from the Emerald Fox forum, a highly encrypted, peer-to-peer communication platform popular among those who prioritized absolute anonymity. The chat history was extensive, spanning years, and the sender? An anonymous handle, but the distinctive turn of phrase, the almost poetic descriptions of financial exploits, the subtle regional slang. It was the Emerald Fox. And the recipient? Another anonymous handle, but the messages themselves were sickeningly familiar. They spoke of the former investment firm, the one Mr. Abernathy had worked at, the one that had mysteriously collapsed. The Emerald Fox was instructing the recipient, providing detailed instructions on how to exploit a specific financial vulnerability, how to manipulate market data, how to siphon off funds without detection. And the timing of these instructions perfectly aligned with the firm's downfall. My gaze drifted to the other person in the chat. The recipient's responses were less technical, more focused on logistics and the practical application of the instructions. And then I saw it, a casual, almost throwaway line. Abernathy's a fool. He thinks he's so clever, but he's just a puppet. Abernathy, my former boss. The pieces slammed together with a sickening crunch. Declan Murray, Emerald Fox, had not just been connected to Mr. Abernathy. He had been the architect of his downfall, manipulating him, using him as a pawn in a much larger, more sophisticated scheme. And the security challenge Mr. Abernathy had boasted about? It wasn't a challenge. It was Declan testing his own exploits, using Abernathy's firm as a live laboratory. I quickly snapped a few photos of the most damning exchanges with my phone, the evidence I needed to expose Declan. Just as I finished, I heard footsteps approaching. I quickly locked the tablet, replaced it exactly where I found it, and slipped out of the office, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. Declan Murray wasn't just a rival for Niam's affections. He was a criminal mastermind, an economic saboteur, and somehow, in my relentless pursuit of revenge against Mr. Abernathy, I had stumbled into the heart of his operation. This wasn't a coincidence. It felt like destiny, a twisted form of cosmic justice. The next few days were a blur of intense internal debate. What was my move? Exposing Declan anonymously would be satisfying, but it wouldn't give me the personal retribution I craved. No, I needed to confront him, to see the realization in his eyes as his empire crumbled. But I had to be careful. He was dangerous, intelligent, and clearly ruthless. I decided to bide my time, to gather more evidence, to understand the full extent of his operations. I continued to monitor the network, searching for more hidden servers, for more encrypted communications. I needed to build an irrefutable case, one that would leave him no room to maneuver. One night, as I was working late, Brendan, the systems administrator, approached my desk. "Still at it, Lewis?" he asked, a friendly smile on his face. "You're a real workhorse, but you seem a little different lately, more intense." I forced a casual laugh. "Just really digging into this new infrastructure. Brendan, it's a lot to learn." He nodded, but his eyes lingered on me for a moment too long. "Yeah, I get it, but don't burn yourself out. This place can be a bit demanding, especially when it comes to certain projects." He lowered his voice slightly. "Declan's got a lot riding on that new quantum encryption project. Keeps it under tight wraps. Even I don't have full access to those servers." Quantum encryption. That sent a jolt through me. It was cutting-edge, almost theoretical technology. Why would Cairn Capital, a mid-sized investment firm, be dabbling in something so advanced and secretive? Unless it wasn't for legitimate purposes. Unless it was for something far more illicit. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, forming a disturbing tapestry of fraud and manipulation. Declan Murray was using Cairn Capital as a front for his illegal activities, leveraging their infrastructure and reputation to execute elaborate financial schemes. And his quantum encryption project was likely a smokescreen, or worse, a tool to further obscure his digital tracks. I knew I couldn't go to the authorities yet. Without more concrete, undeniable evidence, it would be my word against his, and he was far more powerful, far more connected. I needed a plan, a strategy to expose him without putting myself in undue danger. My plan began to crystallize. I would infiltrate the quantum encryption project. It was a risky move, but it was the only way to get the full picture, to find the smoking gun. The next morning, I approached Declan's assistant, a severe but efficient woman named Maeve, and requested a meeting with Declan to discuss potential security enhancements for the quantum encryption initiative. Maeve looked at me, a hint of surprise in her eyes. "Mr. Murray keeps that project very close to his chest, Mr. O'Connor, but I'll pass on your request." A day later, to my surprise, I received an email. "Mr. Murray will see you at 3 p.m. I walked into his office with a practiced calm, my heart a drumbeat in my ears. Declan gestured to a chair. "So, Mr. O'Connor," he began, his voice smooth, almost hypnotic, "you believe you can offer insights into the security of our quantum encryption project?" I nodded. "I've been reviewing the network architecture, Mr. Murray, and while I understand the need for discretion, I believe there are certain theoretical vulnerabilities that could be addressed, especially given the sensitive nature of the data involved." I was bluffing, of course, but I needed to sound convincing. He leaned back, a faint smile playing on his lips. "And what precisely are these theoretical vulnerabilities you speak of?" I launched into a carefully rehearsed technical monologue, peppering it with jargon and hypothetical scenarios that sounded plausible to a layman, but were, in essence, meaningless. I watched his face carefully. He listened intently, his gaze unblinking. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then Declan spoke, his voice lower, more serious. "You're a bright man, Lewis. Very bright, and very observant." He paused, his eyes narrowing slightly. "But sometimes observation can lead to misunderstandings. This project is far more complex than it appears on the surface." He stood up and walked to a large, abstract painting on the wall. With a click, the painting slid aside, revealing a hidden steel door. He turned back to me, his smile gone. "Perhaps," he said, his voice now devoid of any warmth, "you'd like a private tour, a deeper understanding of what we truly do here at Cairn Capital." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a tour. It was an unveiling, a test, or perhaps a threat. But I had come too far to back down. "I'd be honored, Mr. Murray," I said, my voice betraying none of the terror that was now coiling in my stomach. The game was no longer just about revenge. It was about survival, and I was walking directly into the lion's den.